Ladies and gentlemen, we are indeed very honored to have a distinguished panel of experts who are deeply involved in cultural conservation and journalism. They will share their invaluable insights on the importance of cultural heritage and the challenges involved in preserving it. Our first panelist is Mr. Somi Roy, author and cultural conservationist. Mr. Roy's work has significantly contributed to the field of cultural preservation, and his profound understanding of cultural heritage will provide us with valuable perspectives. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Somi Roy to the stage. Next we have Mr. Somnath Bhattabyal, author and journalist. Mr. Bhattabyal's expertise in documenting and reporting on cultural issues will offer a unique viewpoint on how media can play a role in preserving cultural identity. Mr. Somnath Bhattabyal, a warm welcome to you. Our session will be moderated by Professor Sheila Borra, a historian and heritage conservationist. Professor Borra's extensive knowledge of historical and cultural issues, combined with her passion for conservation, makes her the perfect guide for today's discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Sheila Borra, as I welcome her onto the stage. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. I will request Ms. Indrani Raimedi, feature editor, the Assam Tribune, to kindly come forward to felicitate our moderator and our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, now that our panel is well assembled, I will hand over the floor to Professor Sheila Borra, who will lead us through this important conversation on cultural heritage and identity preservation. Ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone present. First of all, let me do the formalities and thank Assam Tribune to do this honor for me. It's a great privilege to be here, and not only to be in the midst of such a great audience, but I have two renowned authors sitting by my side, and I feel very privileged to be with you. Honestly speaking, this session is supposed to be on cultural heritage and identity. So before I call my speakers, my panelists, to talk about the subject matter, I, as a historian and a cultural conservationist, would like to put in a little bit about my views on this subject. Actually, cultural heritage is our identity. There's no doubt about it. And all the tangible and intangible assets which have come down to us from the past generation is something that we look forward to and we should cherish. Actually, our Honorable Chief Minister this morning has set the trend. He has said how important it is for us to save our cultural heritage in spite of all the development that is taking place around us. Now, our region, Assam, and especially the Northeast, is not very good at history writing. And so as a result, if we read the pan-Indian history that we have about this region, there is very little on the Northeast, the culture and history, the cultural heritage of the Northeast, because most of it was in oral traditions, and while our pan-Indian history writers went to sources, they did not think it was important to look at the cultural history or the oral traditions. Now we have plenty of oral traditions, beautiful descriptions, folk myths, legends, folklores, and they are full of, things like blue skies, green hills, water bodies, animals, birds like cuckoos and crows, and animals like rhinos, elephants. They're all part of us together. We had heroes who came down from the skies. They came to the earth, down the golden ladder or whatever, They found enough land, they settled, there were no borders, nobody wondered where those borders came from, which part of the land belonged to them or to whom it belonged. It was everybody's land, and this is our heritage. Suddenly we come to the colonial history, we come to pan-Indian history where borders were created and our cultural heritage was totally forgotten. And this is the reason why so many ethnic crises in this part of the country are taking place. That is my submission. We have totally forgotten our cultural heritage. I know it is very dangerous to accept every bit of our folklore or cultural history as history per se. But after 1961, oral history, oral traditions have come to be accepted as technical sources. And there are very definite ways and means how we can take them as a part of our history, which parts we can accept as history. And I'm sure with these oral traditions, our cultural heritage will once again, gain the importance it should. Because every community now is trying to look back to a tradition of their roots, of their history, which they will not find in the written history, but only in the oral history. Now, in this respect, I have my two authors, Somi Roy from Manipur. He is actually a film curator. He has written books on polo, but suddenly he has developed and written this book on, and that is why the myths of Manipur retold, and folk tales of Manipur retold. He has given up a career in USA, come and settled in his own land to write about myth. Not exactly, he didn't come back with this purpose, but when he returned, he got into this, he got drawn into this thing about writing about the myths. On the other hand, I have Somnath, who is also equally, he has done his PhD in literature from Delhi, he has done a PhD from anthropology in London, and he's working in the Oriental and African School of Studies in London. And he has written, I'm sure all of you you must have gone through his book, The Red River, which is again, I think, if not directly connected with the cultural heritage, it is a result of the outcome of neglecting a cultural heritage where, he talks, his main crux of his book, you will realize, is about a nation state and what people and the different opinions of people towards that nation state. And how are those opinions formed? That is very important. So before I go on further, I think I will first ask Mr. Somi Roy to please tell us a little bit about your book and how you derived this passion to write about the myths of Manipur. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sheila. Hey, Somnath. Yes, the requisite thank yous very sincerely felt to Assam Tribune. But in particular, I want to thank the people I've been working with on WhatsApp when I had it, because it was shut off in Manipur a few days ago while I was there. Joyshri Barua, Maithili, and team over there, you know who you are. Thank you very much for everything, arranging my travel, worrying about me, sending notes of concern about what's going on in Manipur with our bomber drones and missiles that can fire 8 kilometers. That's what we're having in Manipur right now. Anyway, that's why I'm so happy to be here. I had a nice long bath today. You made my life sound very dramatic. But in a sense, you're right. I came back to run a foundation that I'd founded called IMASI, the Maharaj Kumari Binodini Devi Foundation. And Binodini, as she was known, was a writer and published a bunch of books, quite well known, and also left a bunch of books that were not published. So I essentially came back to run this foundation that I had established, and I thought it was important to save the work of this writer, who happened to be my mother, but also a woman writer from the Northeast, and I thought that it was important enough, and I wasn't really doing anything worthwhile anymore in the US. I'd been there for 34 years, so I decided to just kind of flip life around and take over curating my own life in its third act. Which brings me here. Now, you can start the visuals, Mr. Technician. Okay, so that's my first book. I had done a bunch of translations of Binodini before that Penguin had published and Zuban and so on. And then they asked me to write this book because they they heard from me about my interests in Manipuri manuscripts that very few people in the world know about, and we can talk about that later. And then Penguin asked me if I was interested in writing about my work in digitizing Manipuri manuscripts. And so the result of that was this book called And That Is Why. And in order to make it my own book, it became Manipuri Myths Retold. In my own fashion, Manipur has quite, for a place its size, it's about 1/10 the size of New Delhi, of the NCR. They have a fairly robust publishing. I can't call it industry, but it's really self-publishing by authors. It's not as if these stories are not well known. They are written about in Manipuri by various people, and at some level, it's very well known. However, I found that this book is very popular, especially with young people, who kind of seems to know the bits and pieces of the story, but just kind of very happy to have it all in one place. So these are 12 stories, and I drew the sources from oral traditions, because these songs are sung about, and also from text origins, because these are also written in the Manipuri Puya. So I drew them from two different sources, added a little bit of my seasoning, and did my own retelling, and it became this book called And That Is Why. And because it was quite successful, still being sold, can we have the next slide? Penguin asked me to write a second book, and this is the second book I wrote called, I pardon my language, but the book is called Feathers, Fools and Farts, and these are Manipuri folk tales retold. So both of them are retold, but I was happy to be asked to write the second one because this was in collaboration with a friend of mine who likes collecting stories, and so she gave me the essential narrative spine, which we all know really, but it's nice for someone to write it down for me. And then I did the retelling in a similar style to the first book. And the pleasure I derived from this was to claim and to posit that a small civilization called Manipur has a mythology. There is no such thing as an Indian mythology. There is a Hindu mythology, the Ahom mythology, etc., Buddhist mythology, Islamic mythology. There isn't probably an Indian mythology in the making right now that people are trying to create for the entire country, but otherwise, mythology is basically an aspect of religion. And this is something that I was trying to get across to the editors at Puffin in Penguin, and I thought, what better way than to actually have two different books? One on mythology, an aspect of religion, and one on folk tales, which is what the Germans called Volkskultur, I think, and folk culture, ordinary people, tales of the hearth, secular, rather rude sometimes, scary tales and so on. And that comes from the people, from the grassroots, from the villagers, whereas the previous book, And That Is Why, comes from the pundits of the day who knew how to write, and there's all aspects of religion, and therefore, like all religions, don't make sense very much sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sumit. So now we come to our second author, Mr. Somnath Bhattacharya. Somnath, would be very nice if you introduce your book, The Red River, to our audience. I'm sure many of you have read his book, but it is rooted in Guwahati, if I may say so. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
And it talks of the Brahmaputra, the whole thing. I mean, how beautifully he has woven the Brahmaputra into his narrative. It is the story about three very bosom friends, love, loyalty, and then how there comes this sense, I mean, they begin to fear, all three friends have different attitudes towards the nation state. And how do they maintain their friendship in this situation when three of them are fighting in different ways towards the nation state? I think Somnath would be a better person to tell you the story. It's wonderful.
Thank you very much, Sheila, and thank you to the Assam Tribune team to get me here. Thanks very much. I'm glad that you asked about the book. I was worried about you asking me about culture. Being a Bongal, talking about Assamese culture is a very dangerous terrain. So it's easier to talk about something which... this book took me about 13 years to write. And I don't know what to say. Where does one start? Something which took 13 years, less than 13 minutes for us to talk about. I had a very happy childhood. I went to Don Bosco College, school, didn't get into Cotton College, so I had to go to Arjya Vidyapith. And Cotton College has invited me day after tomorrow to give a talk, so which I'm very happy about. That's my revenge. So I had a very happy childhood. I played badminton. I represented the state of Assam for many years. But when I looked back in hindsight and thought about what was going on in the 80s in Assam, realized how violent the times were. And that got me thinking that how did a supposedly marginalized Bengali living in Milonpur, Rihabari, have such a brilliant time? Curfews meant street cricket. Blackouts meant playing hide and seek with the next door neighbor's daughter, which was really fun. So I started to think about how I grew up, who my friends were, what were the influences, and also how India was viewed, how the Assamese viewed themselves, how they viewed the outsider, how we had reached that space. So 1971 and the Bangladesh war became a huge point because a lot of things changed there. Then I traced it back to 1947. So all of these stories came together, and I wrote about three friends, as you say. One, a Bengali, loosely created around my experiences. One, my best friend, Ribjit Kalita, who became Rizu in the book. That was my way of getting back at him for calling me Bongal all those years. And the third was the army boy, who also, the army comes in the early 90s. And there are three stories and the three ways they navigate a very difficult terrain. But ultimately, the book became about love and loyalty and friendship and how we grew up pre-satellite TV, almost pre-television in those days. The joy of seeing first day, first shows, fighting to see Blue Lagoon in Meghdut with the blackers. All of that, and it was just joy. But it took me 13 years, because it was about 300,000 words. We had to edit it for the last 4 to get it down to publishable sizes. You know what publishers do. But pure joy. And it's paid off. Assam Tribune finally called me. So I'm here. So, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I do hope you guys will read it. It's a good book, actually. I'd never recommend my other books, but if... Pardon?
Already gone through it. And I love that. That's a masterpiece.
I know.
Sir, thank you. Kind. Thank you.
Thank you for complimenting me. Anyway, and now, Somi, I come back to you about your manuscripts. How did you get the idea of preserving that? Because I have been doing that, and I know it's a very, very difficult job to get the source of the manuscripts, to digitize them, and the language. I mean, it is from the manuscripts that you have written the stories. How did you read the manuscripts? What language were they in?
I cheated. Yes, I did not read the manuscripts except some of them that had already been transliterated in some way or the other. The manuscripts of Manipur, they're centuries old. Our writing system goes back to about the 12th century, and it's called Meitei Mayik. It was abandoned in favor of the Bangla script sometime around the 18th century, and increasingly so until 1891, when Manipur became a part of the British Indian Empire after the Anglo-Manipuri War. So we have in Manipur today, we have two scripts. One is called Aribalong, Old Manipuri, and one is called Manipuri, Meitei Lone. Meitei Lone is the endonym, and Manipuri is the exonym that we are known by other people. Like the Indian Constitution refers to Manipuri, for instance. So the Aribalone is written largely in Manipuri in the Meitei Mayik, and most of these manuscripts have really not been transcribed or written out or translated, and not really accessible. I used to read Meitei Mayik, which I learned as a teenager, but now through disuse I don't know it at all. So I used the expertise and the knowledge of my friend Kaba, who is an archivist. And so I ask him about things. Then I go back to the balladeer, and then I get and say, what do your songs say about this story? And then he tells me a story which might be slightly different. Then I go back to my friend Taoyangba, who had written these stories in Meitei Mayik that I liked very much. So I kind of went through three different sources, caromming from one to the other, and kind of checked in. And that's how I arrived at my stories.
Thank you. To come back to Somnath, Somnath, I have found there's hardly any time, but I have two very interesting observations in our book which I must discuss with you. One is the statement of a Naga. A Naga was asking, a Naga in his book was asking the captain, one of the three friends, do you think the British were justified in occupying our territory? And the army fellow said, no, of course not. And the Naga asked him, then how do you consider yourself justified? One thief has handed over the land to another thief, and you are ruling over that. So I thought that was the crux of your book. It was so interesting. And secondly, your interpretation of rebirth. Please, would you tell me a little bit more about the reinterpretation of rebirth in your book?
Thank you so much for asking these questions. I mean, the second one is very close to me, the idea of rebirth. So my father passed about 11 years ago, in October it'll be 11 years. And we used to have long chats, my father and I, and we were very good friends. And so rebirth was one of those questions I asked him that, Baba, he was a Marxist, so he didn't believe in God. He didn't believe in afterlife. And so I asked him, but what is rebirth then, in the tradition? And he says, rebirth is nothing but tradition, I live in you, and your son will see you and do the same things. And in his actions, I will be alive. So now when I see my son walk He walks like me, and I see my father in him. So rebirth is basically the telling of stories. And that's what I wanted to do with Red River. I wanted to tell these stories to my son, who's an Englishman, he does rap singing, and I wanted him to know these stories, and I wanted him to carry on my father's traditions. And this is how past lives live on in us. We are living embodiments of what you say culture, what is heritage. We carry this within us. And how we tell our stories, the best of us, is reflected in our stories. And that to me is rebirth. And the Naga gentleman is the other story. So I was in Chizami I was making a film, this is about 14, 15 years ago, called Don't Cut My Head Off. It was a film on, just before Copenhagen, the summit happened, and we were working on climate change. I was posted in Germany, and I had this brilliant Naga elder who told me stories through the night. He told me stories where ants could tell weather. By the movements of ants, you knew what the weather would be like. But he told me that ants now lie like politicians, right? So he would tell me about trees which 6 huge men couldn't put their hands around if they stood together. And he says now those trees have vanished because we like teak furniture. And he says the price for a chair and a bed are these trees which have given us shelter. So all those stories were from that gentleman. I had, of course, couldn't, bring everything out, but that was the question, that who are you to rule us? So I was asking the question about borderlands, nation states, who does a land belong to? How do you call me an outsider? Why are you an insider? Where did you come from? As our chief minister said that, if you say a non-Assamese here, somewhere your daughter is being abused or your son is being abused. So we have to keep that in mind. So so the question is about lands and rights and so I almost think something about culture. When we talk about cultural preservation, I get a bit scared because it gets into identity politics, and identity politics can turn very nasty, right? But one thing about Assamese culture, I was blown by, about 10, 12 years ago when I was researching the book. I stayed in Golaghat. Sangeeta's parents were very kindly used to host me. And I used to go from house to meet everybody, people asking their stories. I was in a village called Mela Mora, which became Mora Mela in the book. I used to get scared by the end of 6 months because every time I went to somebody's house, they would say, oh, I also have written a book. Moyo kitab likhisu. They would hand me a book. So by the time I had to go back to England, I had about 3 suitcases of books. So I'm not worried about Assamese culture not being preserved. Everyone has written a book here. So
But thank you very much. I'm sure all of you must be wanting to know more, and off the stage, I think you're most welcome to ask them whatever you would like. Thank you very much.